Leave now, the elder said, his voice carrying across the frozen clearing. And if the wilderness takes you, the pack will not come looking. Elena's heart stood perfectly still as snow drifted through the pale afternoon light. Around her, dozens of wolves watched in silence. Some looked away. Others stared openly. Not one stepped forward. Not one spoke for her. The wind tugged at her worn gray coat as she tightened her grip on the small canvas bag hanging from her shoulder. Everything she owned fit inside it. A spare sweater, a blanket, a photograph of her parents. 22 years of life reduced to a few pounds of belongings. The pack house behind her glowed with warmth. Smoke curled from stone chimneys. Laughter drifted faintly through the air. Home. Yet it had never truly felt like home. Not since she was old enough to understand the looks people gave her. Not since she realized she was the Omega nobody wanted. Go, another elder said. Before nightfall, Elena swallowed hard. Her throat burned, but she refused to cry. She had done that enough over the years. Cried when others mocked her quiet nature. Cried when they blamed her for things she never did. Cried when she learned kindness was often mistaken for weakness. Today, she was done crying. She lifted her chin and looked at the faces surrounding her. Faces she had known her entire life. Faces she had helped during storms. Faces she had sat beside during sickness. Faces she had forgiven again and again. None of them met her eyes. The realization hurt more than the exile itself. Elena turned away before anyone could see the disappointment in her expression. Snow crunched beneath her boots as she walked toward the edge of the territory. No one followed. No one called her name. By the time the forest swallowed the last glimpse of the village, the sun was already sinking behind distant mountains. The temperature dropped quickly. Cold air stung her cheeks. Bare branches swayed overhead like dark fingers reaching across the sky. Every story she had heard as a child warned about the deadlands beyond the northern ridge. Travelers vanished there. Hunters refused to enter after sunset. Even wolves avoided the region. Yet that was exactly where Elena was headed. Because she had nowhere else to go. Hours passed. The snow deepened. Her legs ached with every step. The forest grew quieter until only the sound of wind remained. Shadows stretched across the frozen landscape. The world seemed endless and empty. Elena pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders and continued forward. Then she heard it. A sound so faint she almost believed she imagined it. She stopped walking. The wind howled between the trees. Silence followed. Elena listened carefully. There it was again. A distant cry carried through the storm. Soft. Weak. Barely audible. Not human. Not entirely animal either. Her heartbeat quickened. Common sense told her to keep moving. Night was coming. The temperature was falling fast. Whatever made that sound was none of her concern. But Elena had spent her entire life helping others, even when nobody helped her. Some habits were impossible to abandon. The cry came again. Closer this time. Somewhere beyond the curtain of snow. Elena took a slow breath and turned toward the sound. Far ahead, hidden among the swirling white darkness, something waited beneath the storm. The wind cut across Elena's heart's face as she moved deeper into the forest, her boots sinking into layers of wet snow. Each step was measured and careful, as though the forest itself demanded respect. The faint cry that had drawn her from the safety of the familiar path sounded again, clearer this time, quivering and urgent. She followed it, navigating around ice-laden branches and hidden roots, the cold seeping into her bones. A flash of dark fur caught her eye through the swirling storm, and she froze, holding her breath. Beneath a fallen tree, partially covered in snow, lay a massive wolf, its body trembling. Its fur was black as midnight, slick with snow and frost. Silver arrows were lodged across its shoulder and flank, some bent, some piercing only skin. The wolf lifted its head weakly, amber eyes meeting hers with a glimmer of trust and desperation. Elena approached slowly, careful not to startle it. Her hands hovered above the fur, feeling the heat and life beneath the frost, and she whispered, softly, "I will not leave you here alone." She tore a strip from her scarf to bind a bleeding wound and scanned her bag for anything that could help, finding only a small bottle of herbal oil and a bandage from her grandmother's pack. The wolf whined softly, leaning into her hands, a faint growl rumbling in its throat as if acknowledging her presence. The forest around them seemed to pause, the usual sounds of wind and cracking ice fading into a heavy silence. as if observing the fragile bond forming in that moment. Elena's breath came in shallow gasps, visible in the cold air, and she adjusted her position so she could lift the wolf onto her shoulders. It was heavy, more than she had anticipated, yet she held it steadily, moving with careful balance across the uneven terrain. Her thoughts raced. How had such a creature come to this? Why had nobody else noticed or cared? She remembered the stories whispered in the pack about the black wolf, a beast that wandered the borders of northern kingdoms, feared and misunderstood. Her instinct told her that this was no ordinary wolf. She trudged forward, each footstep a battle against the deep snow, until she found a fallen log forming a natural shelter. She gently lowered the wolf beneath it, wrapping her scarf and coat around its body to shield it from the chill. The wolf's breathing was shallow, but rhythmic, and it turned its head to nuzzle her hand, a silent acknowledgement. Elena's heart thumped in her chest, a mixture of fear, awe, and determination. She whispered, "I will keep you safe. I will make sure you live." Outside, the storm raged, snow whipping around the clearing, but beneath the fallen log, a fragile warmth persisted, a fragile sense of hope that Elena would guard with every ounce of strength she possessed. Shadows flickered as branches swayed overhead, but inside her small sanctuary, the world narrowed to just her and the wounded wolf, and a quiet, unspoken promise hung between them that neither would face the night alone. Elena woke to the sound of wind rattling the frozen branches above the shelter. Pale morning light filtered through the falling snow, casting a silver glow across the small space. Beneath the fallen log, for a moment she forgot where she was. Then she felt the warmth beside her. The black wolf was still alive. Relief washed through her so suddenly that she almost laughed. Instead, she pressed a trembling hand against its thick fur and closed her eyes. The wolf opened its amber eyes and watched her quietly. There was something unusual about its gaze. It did not look at her the way an animal would. It looked as though it understood every word she never said aloud. Elena pushed the thought away and focused on practical concerns. The storm had weakened during the night, but the temperature remained brutally cold. She needed food, firewood, and a safer place to shelter before darkness returned. The nearest abandoned trapping cabin sat nearly 2 miles north. Her father had shown it to her years ago during a hunting trip. If it still stood, it could save both their lives. She gathered fallen branches and managed to build a small fire using an old flint kit from her bag. The flames flickered weakly before growing stronger. The wolf watched every movement. When she handed it a small piece of dried venison from her supplies, it accepted the food carefully from her palm. Again that strange feeling returned. Trust. Not fear. Not caution. Trust. Hours later the sky brightened enough for travel. Elena rose and adjusted her coat. "We need to move," she said softly. "I know you are tired, but staying here is not an option." The wolf slowly stood. Its movements were stiff, yet stronger than before. Snow slipped from its dark coat as it stepped beside her. Together they moved through the forest. Elena occasionally glanced toward the wolf, expecting it to collapse, but it continued forward with quiet determination. By midday they reached a frozen creek. Elena knelt to fill an empty container with fresh water from a small opening in the ice. As she stood, she noticed tracks in the snow. Human tracks. Fresh ones. Her heartbeat quickened. Nobody should have been this deep inside the deadlands. The wolf noticed them too. Its ears lifted. Its posture changed instantly. Every trace of exhaustion disappeared. A low warning rumble vibrated deep within its chest. Elena followed its gaze toward a distant ridge. For a brief second, she thought she saw movement between the trees. Then it vanished. The forest became silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "Someone is here," she whispered. The wolf stepped closer until its shoulder brushed against her leg. Elena felt strangely protected by the gesture. She was no longer completely alone in the wilderness. Yet that realization brought little comfort. If strangers were searching this region in the middle of winter, they were searching for something important. Or someone important. As the afternoon faded toward evening, Elena and the wolf finally reached the old trapping cabin. The structure leaned slightly to one side, weathered by years of storms, but it still stood. Elena pushed open the wooden door and stepped inside. Dust covered every surface. A stone fireplace occupied one wall. Broken furniture sat scattered across the floor. To Elena, it looked like a palace. She smiled for the first time since her exile. "We made it," she whispered. Behind her, the wolf entered the cabin and paused near the doorway. Its amber eyes reflected the fading sunlight. For a brief moment, Elena could have sworn there was gratitude in them. Then a distant horn echoed somewhere far beyond the forest. The sound drifted across the frozen landscape, low and haunting. Elena froze. The wolf immediately turned toward the door. Whatever had been tracking the wilderness was getting closer. The horn echoed a second time, fainter now, swallowed by the endless forest. Elena remained motionless beside the cabin door, listening until silence returned. The wolf stood near the entrance, every muscle tense, its amber eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the trees. Neither moved for several long seconds. Then the sound faded completely. Whatever had made it was traveling elsewhere, at least for now. Elena released a slow breath and secured the wooden latch. Night settled quickly across the deadlands. Shadows filled the corners of the cabin while wind brushed softly against the weathered walls. Inside, the small fireplace crackled with warmth. Elena spent the evening cleaning the abandoned shelter as best she could. She swept away dust with a bundle of pine branches and stacked broken furniture near the hearth for firewood. The simple tasks kept her mind busy. If she stopped moving, she would start thinking about the pack she had lost and the uncertain future waiting beyond the snow-covered wilderness. The wolf rested near the fire. Over the next several days, a routine slowly formed between them. Each morning, Elena searched for edible roots, berries preserved beneath the snow, and fresh water from the frozen creek. Each evening, she returned to find the wolf waiting. Its strength improved steadily. The wounds that once looked frightening now appeared smaller. Healthy fur gradually covered the injured areas. Sometimes she caught the wolf watching her from across the room with an expression that felt strangely human. One afternoon, while gathering firewood, Elena slipped on a patch of ice hidden beneath fresh snow. Before she could fall, a powerful shape appeared beside her. The wolf pressed against her shoulder, helping her regain balance. Elena laughed softly. The sound surprised even her. She had not laughed in weeks. "Thank you," she whispered. The wolf tilted its head as though it understood every word. As winter days passed, loneliness began to loosen its grip on her heart. The cabin no longer felt empty. The silence no longer felt cruel. She found herself speaking aloud while preparing meals or mending torn clothes. She told the wolf stories about her childhood, about fishing trips with her father, and about her mother teaching her how to identify healing herbs. The wolf listened quietly through every story. Sometimes its tail moved slightly. Sometimes its ears lifted. Those small reactions became the highlight of her days. Yet something continued to trouble her. Certain details did not make sense. No ordinary wolf healed this quickly. No ordinary wolf possessed eyes that seemed to understand sorrow, hope, and gratitude. And no ordinary wolf carried itself with such natural authority. Even injured, there was something regal about it. One evening, as golden firelight danced across the cabin walls, Elena noticed a silver marking hidden beneath the dark fur. Near its shoulder, it resembled a crest or symbol rather than a natural pattern. The moment her fingers brushed it, the wolf became completely still. A strange warmth passed between them. Elena quickly pulled her hand away, startled by the sensation. The wolf stared into her eyes. For one impossible moment, she felt as though someone stood behind those amber eyes, someone intelligent and watchful, someone carrying secrets far larger than the frozen wilderness surrounding them. Outside, snow drifted gently beneath a sky filled with stars. Far beyond the deadlands, unseen by Elena, riders moved across distant roads carrying urgent messages between kingdoms. Search parties expanded their reach with every passing day. Powerful leaders demanded answers. Entire regions whispered rumors about a disappearance that threatened to shake the north. But inside the small cabin, Elena knew nothing about any of it. She only knew that each day the wolf grew stronger, and with every sunrise, the bond between them deepened into something neither fully understood. The first sign of trouble came at dawn. Elena stepped outside the cabin carrying a small basket for firewood and immediately noticed fresh tracks in the snow. Her smile disappeared. The tracks were not animal tracks. They belonged to horses. Several of them. She slowly knelt and touched the frozen impressions. They could not have been more than a few hours old. A chill moved through her that had nothing to do with the winter air. Someone had entered the Deadlands. Someone was searching. Behind her, the black wolf emerged from the cabin. The moment it saw the tracks, its entire posture changed. Its ears lifted. Its amber eyes narrowed. Elena had seen the wolf alert before, but never like this. It looked less like an injured survivor and more like a guardian preparing for something important. Throughout the day, the feeling of being watched refused to leave her. Every sound seemed louder. Every movement among the trees caught her attention. Even the wind felt different. By late afternoon, she was gathering herbs near the creek when distant voices drifted through the forest. Elena immediately crouched behind a cluster of snow-covered pines. Her heart pounded. The voices belonged to men. She could not make out every word, but one sentence carried clearly through the cold air. Find him before sunset. Him. Not it. Him. Elena frowned. The words echoed in her thoughts. She carefully peeked through the branches and spotted 3 riders moving along the ridge above the creek. Their dark cloaks snapped in the wind. Strange silver emblems decorated their shoulders. They were not hunters. They moved with discipline and purpose. One rider pointed toward the northern forest. Another unfolded a map. Elena quickly retreated before they could notice her. She ran all the way back to the cabin. The wolf was waiting outside. Before she could speak, it was already staring toward the distant ridge as if it had sensed everything. They are searching for someone, Elena whispered. And somehow I think it has something to do with you. The wolf held her gaze. Silence stretched between them. Then it stepped forward and gently lowered its head against her shoulder. Elena froze. A strange warmth spread through her chest. The gesture felt almost human, almost like reassurance. As darkness settled across the Deadlands, snow began falling again. Elena secured the cabin windows and added more wood to the fire. The wolf remained near the doorway, alert and watchful. Hours passed. The forest outside disappeared beneath swirling white shadows. Then came a knock. Elena nearly dropped the kettle she was holding. Her eyes widened. Nobody should have known the cabin existed. Another knock echoed through the room. Slow, deliberate. The wolf instantly moved in front of her. Firelight danced across its black fur. Elena could hear her own heartbeat. The third knock came louder than before. Then a calm voice spoke through the storm. We know someone is inside. We are not here to harm anyone. We only seek the black wolf. The cabin fell silent. Elena stared at the door. The wolf stared at the door. Outside, unseen figures waited in the snow while inside the small cabin a single choice threatened to change both of their lives forever. The wolf moved forward, breaking into a sudden run toward the edge of the clearing. Elena followed, her coat whipping around her as she sprinted over packed snow and hidden ice. Through the thinning forest, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was massive, taller than any wolf or man she had ever seen, with a powerful build that seemed to command the very space around it. Its eyes, amber at first glance, shifted in the firelight, reflecting silver and gold in a way that made Elena stumble backward. Her breath caught. The wolf slowed as they reached the figure, and then something impossible happened. The black fur melted away, reshaping and folding into the contours of a human form. Elena could not believe her eyes. Standing before her now was a man, tall and imposing, his hair dark and shoulder-length, his eyes shimmering silver, the depth of a winter sky. Every inch of him radiated strength and command. He stepped closer, and she noticed the subtle movements of a crown-like ridge along his shoulders, like the remnants of a regal beast. Elena's knees weakened as the truth dawned. The wolf she had cared for, tended to, and protected was no ordinary creature. It was Alpha King Rowan Blackthorn. He studied her silently, eyes scanning every expression, every tremor in her stance, as though measuring her resolve. You saved me, he said quietly, voice deep and resonant, carrying the weight of authority and something more fragile, almost disbelief. Elena shook her head, trying to find words, but none came. Her lips parted, then closed again. She could feel the tension, the unspoken acknowledgement of everything they had endured together. The storm had quieted, leaving only the soft fall of snow, as if the world itself paused to witness the moment. Rowan lifted a hand, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. His touch was careful, deliberate, and Elena felt warmth spreading through her chest where cold had ruled for weeks. He did not speak again immediately, instead allowing his presence, his very being, to convey recognition and gratitude. Elena's gaze traveled from his eyes down to the mark she had seen before on his shoulder, the silver crest, now clearly part of his human form. Her fingers itched to reach out, to touch, to confirm that this was truly him, and when she did, he allowed it. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips as he bent slightly, acknowledging her courage, her compassion, and the strength that had carried them both through isolation and danger. The forest felt smaller now, the wind gentler, the snow a soft carpet beneath their feet. Around them, time seemed suspended, a bridge between the wilderness of the past days and the impossible reality of the present. Elena realized that nothing would ever be the same again. Rowan's presence was proof of a larger world, of kingdoms, of duty, and of destinies entwined. The air was heavy with the knowledge that from this point forward, every choice, every action, would carry weight beyond the forest, beyond the snow, beyond anything she had imagined. Yet despite it all, for that moment, there was only the two of them, standing in quiet understanding, bound by the fragile, extraordinary trust born from weeks of survival and care. The next morning arrived beneath a sky of pale silver clouds. Elena stood outside the cabin, watching sunlight spill across the endless snowfields. Everything felt different now. The wilderness no longer seemed like a prison. It felt like the place where her life had unexpectedly begun again. Behind her, Rowan stepped from the cabin. Even dressed in the simple clothing she had found among the abandoned supplies, there was no mistaking who he was. Authority followed him as naturally as breath. Yet when his silver eyes settled on her, she saw the same quiet gratitude that had existed in the wolf she had cared for. For a brief moment neither spoke. The cold air carried only the sound of distant wind moving through the trees. Finally Rowan broke the silence. "You cannot stay here any longer." Elena lowered her gaze. Deep down she already knew. The secret hidden within the Deadlands had not remained hidden. Riders were searching. Questions were spreading. The world beyond the forest was moving closer every day. "You want me to come with you?" she said softly. Rowan nodded. "You saved my life. My kingdom owes you more than I can ever repay." Elena looked away toward the horizon. Kingdom. The word felt impossibly large. Only weeks ago she had been an unwanted Omega carrying a small bag through a snowstorm. Now the most powerful Alpha in the north stood before her asking her to leave with him. It felt unreal. Before either could continue, a sharp cry echoed through the forest. Rowan immediately turned toward the sound. His expression hardened. Within seconds, several riders appeared between the trees. Their horses slowed the moment they reached the clearing. Relief flooded their faces. One man quickly dismounted and bowed his head. "Your Majesty." Elena stepped back instinctively. The riders barely noticed her. Their attention remained fixed on Rowan. "We have searched every province," the man continued. "The council feared the worst." Rowan listened quietly. Then another rider approached carrying a sealed message. The moment Rowan opened it, the warmth vanished from his expression. Elena noticed the change immediately. The air itself seemed to grow colder. "What happened?" Rowan asked. "Duke Victor Ashmore," the rider answered carefully. "He has begun gathering support among the Eastern Territories. He claims the throne has been weakened by your disappearance. Several noble houses have already joined him." Silence followed. Snow drifted lazily between them. Elena did not fully understand politics or royal power, but she understood danger when she saw it. Rowan folded the letter slowly. His silver eyes darkened with concern. Not for himself. For her. Elena saw it instantly. If powerful men were searching for Rowan, eventually they would discover who had sheltered him. The realization settled heavily in her chest. Rowan stepped closer. "We leave today." His voice remained calm, but urgency lingered beneath every word. "Once Victor learns where I was found, he will want answers." Elena looked back at the cabin. The small shelter had become home. The fireplace. The worn wooden walls. The memories of long winter nights spent speaking to a wounded wolf. Leaving felt harder than she expected. Rowan seemed to understand. "You will always have a place there," he said quietly, pointing not toward the cabin but toward the distant horizon where his kingdom waited beyond. The mountains. Elena met his eyes. For the first time since her exile, she felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt chosen. And as the riders prepared their horses and the road ahead stretched toward an uncertain future, neither of them noticed a lone observer watching from a distant ridge, carrying news that would soon change the fate of kingdoms. The horizon glowed faintly as Elena and Rowan rode through the narrowing pass toward the eastern territories. Snow crunched beneath the horses' hooves, each step measured, each breath visible in the frigid air. Elena's heart pounded with anticipation and fear. She had never left the Deadlands for a journey like this. The forest opened into wide plains dusted in frost, and far ahead, smoke curled from distant settlements. Rowan's expression remained calm, but his eyes betrayed vigilance, scanning the horizon for any sign of movement that should not be there. Elena could sense tension radiating from him. She had never felt a presence so powerful beside her. Every instinct she had developed during weeks of isolation sharpened, aware of the shifting wind, the subtle changes in the snow, the distant echo of hooves. A messenger approached from the ridge, riding quickly with a sealed parchment. Rowan received it without breaking stride, scanning the message carefully. Elena caught a glimpse of his jaw tightening, the flicker of emotion crossing his features. He did not speak, but reined the horse slightly, altering their path toward the first town in the eastern stretch. The village appeared quiet at first, streets empty of any visible people, but as they entered, signs of hurried preparation became evident. Banners fluttered in the wind, walls reinforced, and townsfolk peering from windows with apprehensive eyes. Rowan guided the horse calmly through the center of town. "They expect confrontation," he murmured. Elena's hands clenched the reins. She understood the weight of the moment. Every decision now could shift the balance between kingdoms. Rowan's horse slowed as they reached the gates of a small fort overlooking the valley. Soldiers in gleaming armor lined the battlements, their banners marked with Victor, Ashmore's emblem. Elena swallowed hard. This was a display of power. Not yet an attack, but a test. Rowan dismounted, his boots crunching against frost-laden stone. He held out a hand to Elena, helping her down. She accepted it, heart racing, feeling a strange mixture of fear and resolve. Rowan approached the commander on the walls, speaking quietly. The commander's expression shifted between respect and caution, the men whispering among themselves as they recognized the Alpha King who had returned from the shadows. Elena stood beside Rowan, noticing the subtle way the soldiers' postures straightened, and the air itself seemed to stiffen with recognition. For a moment, it felt as though time itself paused, the cold wind brushing past them in silent witness. Rowan turned to Elena, his voice firm but soft. "Stay close to me. Nothing happens here without my knowledge." She nodded, understanding that the upcoming hours would test them both. As the sun dipped lower, long shadows stretched across the valley, highlighting the distant walls of neighboring territories. The quiet before any movement was tangible. Elena felt a mix of anticipation and dread, but also an unspoken confidence. With Rowan by her side, she was no longer just a girl who had wandered into a frozen wilderness. She was part of something larger, a force that could reshape the destiny of kingdoms. The Alpha King's presence transformed the plain before her from a dangerous expanse into a stage where every action mattered. And as night approached, the first signals of mobilization began, distant lights flickering across the hills, revealing that the war for control and for the protection of one life she had saved was about to unfold. Morning arrived beneath clear skies for the first time in weeks. Sunlight spilled across the valley, turning the snow-covered hills into fields of gold and silver. Elena stood on the balcony of the eastern fort, watching the first signs of peace return to the land. The tension that had gripped the kingdoms for months was finally fading. Word of Rowan Blackthorn's return had spread farther than any messenger could ride. Noble houses that had once hesitated now openly declared their loyalty. Towns reopened their gates. Trade routes came alive again. The fear that had lingered across the north slowly gave way to hope. Yet none of that occupied Elena's thoughts. Her attention remained fixed on the distant mountains. She remembered the frozen forest, the abandoned cabin, the wounded wolf lying beneath the snow. It felt like a lifetime ago. Footsteps approached behind her. Elena smiled before turning around. She already knew who it was. Rowan stepped onto the balcony wearing a dark winter coat trimmed with silver. The morning light caught his eyes, making them shine like polished steel. Despite the crown he carried and the responsibilities waiting for him below, there was a quiet warmth in his expression whenever he looked at her. "You are thinking about the forest again," he said. Elena laughed softly. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to me." He joined her at the railing. For a few moments they stood together in comfortable silence. Below them, banners moved gently in the wind. Soldiers prepared to return home. Merchants filled the roads. Children played in the streets without fear. The kingdom was healing. Rowan rested his hands on the stone railing and looked across the valley. "Do you know what my council asked me yesterday?" Elena shook her head. "They asked why I was willing to risk everything." His voice remained calm, but she could hear the emotion beneath it. "They asked why I crossed provinces, challenged alliances, and ignored every warning they gave me." Elena lowered her eyes. "And what did you tell them?" Rowan turned toward her. "I told them the truth." The wind brushed through her golden hair as she met his gaze. "I told them that when the entire world was searching for a king, one person saw only a wounded creature who needed help." Elena felt her chest tighten. Rowan stepped closer. "I told them that kindness is rarer than power. Loyalty is rarer than wealth. And courage is rarer than either." His voice softened. "You gave all three without asking for anything in return." Elena blinked back unexpected tears. No one had ever spoken about her that way before. Her entire life, she had been overlooked, dismissed, or forgotten. Yet somehow the most powerful alpha in the north had seen her clearly. Rowan reached into his coat and removed a small object wrapped in dark cloth. Carefully, he placed it in her hands. Elena unfolded the fabric and gasped. Inside rested a silver crest identical to the mark she had first noticed hidden beneath his fur. "This belongs to the royal family," she whispered. Rowan nodded. "For generations." Elena looked up in confusion. Rowan smiled. Then, before assembled nobles, commanders, and advisors gathering below, he lowered himself onto one knee. The courtyard instantly fell silent. Every conversation stopped. Every eye turned upward. Elena's heart nearly stopped. Rowan lifted his gaze to hers. "You saved my life when I had nothing to offer you." His voice carried clearly across the courtyard. "You believed in me before you knew my name." Snow sparkled across the distant hills as silence settled over the kingdom. Rowan placed the silver crest over her hands. "If the world remembers my reign, let it also remember the woman whose kindness changed it." Elena felt tears slide down her cheeks. Not from sadness, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that she had finally found where she belonged. Cheers erupted across the courtyard below. Banners rose into the winter sky. Bells echoed through the valley. And far beyond the castle walls, across forests, mountains, and villages, a story began spreading from one generation to the next. Not the story of a king who ruled kingdoms, but the story of an Omega whose compassion transformed one.